Thank you so much for doing this. This is officially my first episode in this series. That
Yes.
Yes, I'm calling it the middle because my favorite place to be is in the middle of a good book.
Oh,
And it's actually perfect because your book found me at a time where I was in my least favorite place, which is that limbo that's like when you finish a good book and you can't find another one.
yeah.
And I'm looking and I'm reading all these things and my Kindle just kept telling me to read your book. So finally I'm like, okay, the universe wants me to read this. I'm reading it and I loved it. It's amazing. And I'm so glad you wrote it. So for people who don't know or haven't heard of it yet, let's start with a brief synopsis of who you are and what the book's about without giving away any good secrets.
Okay, so I'm Byron Lane, and I wrote the book A Star is Bored, which is inspired by the 3 years I was personal assistant to actress Carrie Fisher. And the book is a fictional tale about a celebrity assistant who's trying to manage his eccentric and pretty hilarious movie star boss. And the story of their friendship and how at the end of the day, they kind of come to save each other in many, many special ways.
Something I learned in the last year is to always read the acknowledgments. And your book ended with a proposal. Are you engaged?
Yes, I got engaged. I've been dating my boyfriend, author Stephen Rowley. Many people know him from his best-selling books, The Editor and Lily and the Octopus. And we've been dating for 7 years. And I thought, you know what? It isn't every day that you have a debut novel. I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask him to marry me in the acknowledgments of this book. And it was kind of last minute because the advanced reader copies, the paperbacks were already printed. And the hardcover was at the printer, but I reached out to my editor and I was like, can I do this? And he was like, sure. So they printed the book and they rushed it out to me and I showed it to Steve and he said, yes. And we've been giddy and kind of excited ever since.
So how did that work? Did you hand him the book and say, read the acknowledgments first? Or did you wait and let him finish? Like what happened?
He had read the book previously and I had written
Okay.
something sweet for him in the acknowledgments that he had already kind of read. And but I said, hey, I changed things up. I changed the acknowledgment. I changed the part about you. Will you look at that and tell me what you think? And so he looked at it and he gasped and he smiled and said, yes. It was really cute.
That's so good. So when is the wedding? Are you planning? I know it's a weird time.
We're trying to figure it out. Like we might just go do like a simple legal thing somewhere sometime soon. And then we really want to have a party with all of our friends. And but we want it to be something where folks don't have to wear masks. So we're kind of waiting to see what happens with the pandemic.
Awesome. Well, congrats. That's so exciting.
Fantastic.
So much goodness around this. Okay. So back to the story, which as soon as I finished the book, I was like, I need to talk to you. And I'm so happy that you responded to me on Instagram. I need to know how much of Kathy, who's the fictional character, is Carrie Fisher. Like if you could break it down percentage wise or like tell me any like inside information, please.
Sure. So basically all the characters are heightened versions of people I've met in life in different roles and whatever. So the book is definitely fiction, belongs on the fiction shelf. But it is, there are moments of inspired by real life, but also it's full of imagination. So that's kind of the mix here. And, Carrie used to like to write her books the same way, like a kind of based on real life kind of retelling. And those are the books I like to read. So that's why I chose to write it this way. It also gave so much creative liberty with heightened situations. So it really is fiction and a mix of imagination and a little bit of real life.
Okay, what about the ice cream scene with the chocolate chips?
Oh. So a version of that sort of happened where we ended up watching a movie and Carrie really did love, especially when I first started working for her, she was a connoisseur of cookies and cream ice cream and she loved Baskin-Robbins the best. And I think we were in Dayton and she wasn't able to get the exact kind of ice cream she wanted. So this one had like these large chunks of chocolate chips that she was kind of spitting into a napkin kind of thing. And that was a good example though in the book where Kathy Cannon takes things to a really extreme level that maybe they didn't exactly hit in real life.
No, and I related to that because I love mint chocolate chip. And whenever I am eating mint chocolate chip, if the chips are too big, it just like, it doesn't work. And it just like ruins the whole experience.
It's a science. Why don't they have it figured out?
Right? Like little things just make everything better. So with that said, how much of you is in the character Charlie, because I really appreciated the layers and how deep you went. And that was something I wasn't really anticipating when I picked the book up. Like, it was truly like this coming of age story, and your story was so captivating, or Charlie's story, sorry, so captivating.
Yeah. So it's the same kind of thing. Like some of the experiences that Charlie has are inspired maybe by real life, but really it's just full of imagination and not real enough. So it's fiction. But I relate to a lot of things that Charlie went through. I relate to being in a job that wasn't fulfilling, and feeling depressed, and having dark thoughts about what's the meaning of life, what am I doing here, and like Charlie's experience with Kathy, where she came into his life and was a big bright light. Carrie Fisher was that for me. And so what I tried to do was just kind of capture the spirit of that experience, the spirit of having someone see you and understand you, and fill the characters of Charlie and Kathy with that kind of life.
And I think that now is such a good time for a book like this to come out, because I think being in quarantine and just going through this pandemic and everything else that's happening in the world, I think everybody is kind of in this like self-reflection mode. So to see that and to read that experience, I think it's very inspiring. So thank you. And I think that now is a wonderful time for anyone to read this. There's something that, a piece of it that people can relate to, which is awesome.
Thank you. And those characters too did both face a sort of isolation, Charlie from his insecurity and Kathy from her fame. And I think that it brought them together, and it was fun to write an experience for these two people who have to manage that isolation and find friendship and love and happiness and humor and all that stuff.
So another thing in the book, like Kathy is always saying, like, this will be great for your book. And I'm just wondering, was writing a book for you something that was a dream? And is this like a major bucket list accomplishment? Like, how do you feel right now?
Oh, I'm so excited and so grateful. The response has been so good. And I can't say though that writing a book, being an author, was something that I wanted, but I definitely my whole life have been a storyteller. And so I started my career in college really as a journalist, and studied broadcast news and worked in TV news.
Me too.
I know, friends, we're a similar path.
Yeah.
So like you, I was a storyteller, and I also wrote like a feature film with Octavia Spencer, and I wrote a web series with Jonathan Van Ness, and so I've done lots of different projects, and so this is my first book, and it's been the most interesting artistic experience, because with a book you get to create this huge world and all these wonderful layers that sometimes you can't always get to with a film script or a web series or something like that.
So what's next for you?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I definitely want to do a second book, and I haven't landed though on an idea. I'm still in the phase of waking up in the middle of the night and jotting ideas down in my iPhone notes.
To be an assistant, like, that is so interesting in this world that you give us a little peek into. Like, talk to me about that. Would you ever go back to that, or like, would you recommend it to someone?
The thing about it is it can be a really hard career, and some people do make careers out of them because you get paid a lot of money, you're experiencing amazing things, you're meeting amazing people, everyone wants to ask you questions about your boss and your life. I was really lucky because working for Carrie Fisher was a dream come true. She was the best boss. She was a good friend. She was a kind and generous person. There were no crazy running of weird errands and things like that. She never threw things at me. But you hear these stories though of other celebrity bosses who are not as kind and not as generous, and don't have any sense of who they're working with, and that wasn't my experience. So if you can find someone who is like Carrie Fisher, you should jump on that experience. But for the most part, it can be like any other job, like kind of hard and require like navigating and maybe therapy and all the usual stuff.
Right, of course. And I want to say, I know you've been and you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but you've been going through your own health challenges. So if you want to open up about it, how are you doing? And congrats on the battle.
Oh,
and getting
thanks.
to this point.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm doing great. My hair is growing back. I just got done with chemo. And so I had testicular cancer 5 years ago. And they took out the testicle that had cancer, and my tumor markers went back to normal. And so they said that I didn't need chemo and that we would just do routine scans. And if it lasted 5 years, I was in the clear. And almost to the day of 5 years, did a scan, and it showed that some cancer was in the lymph nodes. So I did some chemo, and cancer is dead. There's still like a little mass in there, and I'm going to have a surgery on Monday to take that out. And but then I should be done, and I'm feeling great, and everything's looking up.
Awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. And you clearly are meant to put more good out into the world. So
I hope so.
Yes, for sure.
And
I guess we'll end it with, if you could just give me one Carrie story that is not in the book that would just, to give people a little like inside information.
Sure. So I think one thing people don't maybe get a sense of looking at her public life is just how generous she was. She was generous to everyone. So generous to the people who worked for her, generous to fans who came up to her on the street, generous to friends. And I remember this one experience. So working for her, I was very protective. I like to know who was in her life, who was in her circle, who was she interacting with. And one day she said, "Oh, a friend's coming over with his family." I didn't know this guy and the whole thing, but it was a father, and he was coming over with his 2 teenage daughters because they had been fighting. Their family wasn't getting along, and she invited them over to come sit on her bed and work out their problems. And she closed the door, and they chatted for a few hours. And she acted as sort of a counselor, a guide, a therapist, and that's really like such a great example of who she was. She was there to help, and I hope that when people think about her and all the joy she's brought, I hope they think about the little things too, like that, the little things she did in private that were so sweet and meaningful. She was really a great person.
Awesome. So cool. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for writing this book and for everything. Everyone needs to go and download it or buy it or however you read. And the Audible version's great too. I often do both the Kindle and the Audible. So when I'm like running, I can listen and then get back to it. So yeah, congrats on everything. And everyone should follow you with your Instagram handle just so people can, I'll link to.
ByronLane.com, DOTCOM.
Awesome.
Because Byron Lane was already taken.
The nerve.
You
should argue that. You're like, I am a star. Get that other one shut down.
That's right. Thanks, Ashley.